finances and the stability of the school system. So he'll present that to you tonight because everyone may not understand all the dynamics that are in place. And then after that, we certainly will open up the floor to anyone who would like to speak and share your concerns. Typically, during our board meeting, when we have public speaking, each person will come up and, we provide in our board policy 5 minutes for that individual to speak. We'll certainly offer that tonight as well for whomever would like to speak and share your thoughts in reference to House Bill 581. So again, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you all for your interest in this. School systems, counties, and cities are doing this all over the state. It's not just Twiggs County. These meetings are happening all over the state. And you'll see tonight in the presentation that Mr. Austin will provide how most of the districts have responded. Some of them, their decisions are still unknown, but many of them have already reported to the Georgia School Superintendent Association what their Board of Education's intent is on this particular bill. So we'll start. Again, thank you for being here tonight. We are looking forward to sharing this information, and we do have 2 additional meetings that are forthcoming. One on the 31st of January, that'll be at 9 in the morning, and then our final meeting will be on February the 7th, and that'll be at 6, okay? So, Mr. Austin, I'm gonna turn it over to you at this point, and as I was coming in, I was met by one of our illustrious 4-term board member, said that our Mr. Neesmith wanted to be one of the first that spoke, and he may have something he needs to do. So we certainly will give you the microphone as soon as Mr. Austin is done with his presentation. Okay? You're welcome. Mr. Austin. Sit over here on the side tonight. You okay with that? I'm fine. Yeah. So you can see the screens.
Well, good evening, everyone. Dr. Bullitt, our superintendent, has already provided welcome, salutations, and kind of gave us an overview of what we'll be talking about tonight. So we have just to orientate you to the room, both monitors here, and we have a monitor there, so we'll follow along with the monitors, and I'll read and prepare myself from this presentation here. This tonight is to be informative, to give you information as we know it. This is our first hearing. This is the first time anybody publicly has heard this information. So we're on a good foot. It is being streamed live on Facebook, so we want to ensure transparency is a must. All the advertisement has been done on our local paper, website, and also on Facebook social media pages. So we feel we've covered all our ends on that, and we'll kind of go through our next 2 hearings. So our next 2 hearings on January 31st. We'll have another one at 9 o'clock in this room, and on February the 7th will be our last hearing at 6 o'clock p.m. We are a school district with a vision to generate excellence, one team, one goal, and we have a mission to inspire, challenge, and prepare all students to compete globally. Now, in a nutshell, what this bill is. It was introduced in November of 2024 during the general election on the ballot, and it was to address rising property values and taxes. Now, I want to point your attention to the ballot question, which should be familiar. This is what was shown to you all in November. And that question read, shall the Constitution of Georgia be amended as to authorize the General Assembly to provide by general law for a statewide homestead exemption that serves to limit increases in the assessed value of homesteads, by which any county, consolidated government, municipality, or local school system may opt out of upon the completion of certain procedures. 63% statewide voted yes, 75.83% in Twiz County voted yes. One of the key elements is the floating homestead exemption. This is a section of House Bill 581 that is really being addressed here in the ballot question. The proposal is saying that it would cap annual increases in the taxable home value based on a prior year inflation rate. The inflation rate measure will likely be the Consumer Price Index, which we know as the CPI, which will be set by the State Revenue Commissioner. It'll be set at the state level. Now, the real question, how does this new homestead exemption impact existing Twiz County homestead exemptions? This new floating homestead exemption is in addition to and not instead of all non-floating homestead exemptions. This would not repeal or replace any exemptions you currently have. So it does not take anything away from what you have at your local exemption level. Currently, we do not have a floating homestead exemption. All our homestead exemptions are fixed, and we'll go over those definitions here shortly. And the decision of whether to opt out or not will impact other local governments, as Dr. Bullard has said, and that's the city, county, and also the school board of education. We all are eligible to make that decision. And the most important question here is the decision to opt out or stay in permanent. And yes, if a local government opts out, there's no future method to opt in unless the legislation changes down the road somewhere. But as of right now, we're looking at a 50-year period of staying opt in or opt out, depending on the decision. So from a local perspective, House Bill 581 promises to limit tax bill increases during reassessments. Our district and the county as well has effective tools to protect homeowners from sudden property value increases. One of those, which the county offers, is through a senior exemption. I know the tax commissioner was very avid about ensuring that we took care of our seniors, and that amount doubled from $15,000 to $30,000 to include more residents in that senior exemption. We also have a homestead exemption of $6,000. The county and the Board of Education in particular, in the city, has the authority to roll back or lower the millage rate. Now, one thing about the Board of Education, we have done that in 2021, 2022, and 2023 during the height of the pandemic to ensure we did not pass any additional costs to taxpayers. So we do have historic evidence to support. We will use the tools if we need to ensure that tax dollars and tax bills are not going up more than they should. We're not looking to take any additional money from taxpayer dollars because we have opportunities to roll that back to get what we need to balance our budget and also ensure you're not spending too much out of pocket. So as we move forward, how does the House Bill 581's floating homestead exemption work? So it's based on a base year assessed value. So for homes receiving the exemption starting in 2025, the base year value will be the 2024 assessed value. For homes receiving the exemption in later years, the base year will be the assessed value of the prior year. Now here are some reset conditions. And I wanted to put the ballot question up here for a reason because it does not specify these particular elements. The reset conditions. The exemption value will reset under two circumstances: when your home is sold and when you want to add some new things onto your property, maybe a deck or maybe want to add a swimming pool or do some other major renovations. again, it will reset. And non-transferability, the exemption cannot be transferred to a new property if the homeowner moves. Now, we talked about the definitions a little bit between the regular homestead and floating. What we have in the county is a homestead exemption, our regular, and it's fixed. So that means that it has a set dollar amount, and we said that was the $25,000 to $6,000, and that's the amount that it reduces your home's taxable value by. The floating homestead exemption is by nature designed to do just that. It's designed to fluctuate depending on what the market is doing. And so in this particular case, if there's a market percentage in place with the inflation rate, the floating exemption will ensure that it reduces it to the inflation rate. And we'll walk through an example of that as well. So if the property has a taxable value of $100,000 in the first year, and the inflation rate, the CPI, is 2%, the following year, the taxable value can increase by only up to that 2%. It cannot exceed that. So this is what we're talking about, cap. It cannot exceed 2%. This is assuming that the reassessment value will increase by 10%. So what will happen is that that floating exemption will adjust to cover the $8,000, so the homeowner will only pay taxes on $102,000 instead of the full market value. But here's this. Non-homestead properties such as commercial, industrial, agriculture, and multifamily residential will continue to be valued at that fair market value. So in other words, this does not apply to those individuals in those categories. Now, the school district is a little unique in a lot of ways, but in particular with our quality basic education formula, which we call as QBE. QBE is Georgia state funding formula designed to ensure we have the funding for an equitable education in the state. But it mandates contributions like a 5 mil share and include equalization to support funding across other districts. Now, this 5 mil share, the district, all district must contribute 5 mils of local property tax revenue to fund public education across the state. So while we have our tax revenue, we also have to give a percentage of that back to the state as well to fund other school districts. Now, we debate in the public school system space a lot about this definition of high wealth and what does that really mean. Twiggs County is considered high wealth based on property values relative to student population. The state considers Houston County low wealth. And Twiggs County Board of Education is high wealth. We pay school districts like Houston County, Atlantic Public Schools to fund their education initiatives. So the state not only makes us contribute 5 mils, they also then makes us give that money to school districts, in my opinion, that have a lot more resources at their disposal than we do in Twiggs County. So that's a heavy consideration for us because we have those funding considerations. The unrestricted equalization grant is there, and I mentioned some of these districts, but Houston County receives $71.8 million. Bibb, $23.1. Lawrence, $10.7. Jones, $9.3. Blakely, $6.1 million. Crawford, $1.9. Pulaski, $1.4. And Wilkinson County doesn't receive any. So what we're paying here goes to help these other districts, and we do not receive any additional funding from this. So this is one of the inequities that happens to smaller districts, and the reason we have to consider things like House Bill 581 in its entirety, not from a particular stakeholder group, from all stakeholder groups, because it does have impact to multiple places. So a projection we looked at, talking to our director in the audit departments and looking at our sales study ratios, we figured if 40% reassessment, we're just looking at historically over the past 15 years, what that will look like if we had increases every year. And the loss that the district will have in this particular scenario in 2025 through 2030, you look at your first year with the debt digest, with the reassess with the cap, and then the taxes at 40% assessment ratio. We're looking at a revenue loss due to the cap of $506,256. And that goes incrementally up each year until we reach out to 2030. So we do see that there are potential revenue losses with the cap in place if reassessments was to happen in this particular market. We're also using real data from our sales ratio. Currently, the property is assessed in this county at 32.69%. The fair market value says that 40% says that we'll collect most, if not all, of the available revenue from the property. But currently, we're losing $420,000 just because of the sale ratio being so low. So we do know that there's another funding restriction there. But like I just mentioned about the local 5 mil share, not only do we have to pay, the local 5 mil share includes in this loss, and that gives us $2.3 million that we're looking at just in 2025 if all things were in place. So the school district has multiple funding obligations than maybe opposed to the county or the city in these particular instances. So we do already have significant losses. But if you remember, we rolled back the millage rate 21, 22, and 23 despite these losses and revenues being there. And we've been able to do the things we need to do. However, this bill puts more restrictions on an already restricted funding group. And that's what we're looking at. So as we move to the next slide. So we look at the unequal assessment ratio. Twitts County Public School collect taxes at 32.69%. This is as of 2023. The impact of the floating homestead exemption, caps of revenue collected, reducing our availability of funds. Despite this cap, the 5 mil share is still calculated at 40%. So despite this cap, we are still responsible for paying 40% of the value, not 32.69%. The state does not mind collecting its dollars, and regardless of what our assessment is in the county, we are still responsible for paying 40%. So now you have a cap on revenue and also have an increase in money that we have to pay out at a higher rate. So that is the complexity of the school formula for us, because the state has some layers that we have to consider in this. The additional costs, I talked about a 5 mil share, but in actuality, we're paying 6. With the assessment value being where it is, and also with the market and how it has fluctuated, it causes us to pay more dollars into that equalization. So more of our money is going to the Housings and Bibbs in order to fund their initiatives. So we're looking at a reduction in potential revenue and also paying more money to the state. Dr. Bullock talked about several counties, city schools, and not Twitts County just making the decision. This is a statewide decision. Every county, every city, every municipality, every local taxing authority has to make the decision by March the 1st. This map illustrates a few things. The red illustrates counties, cities that have decided to opt out, or school systems in particular, that have decided to opt out. Currently, we have 98 school districts that have decided or intended to opt out. 25 school districts intend to remain in, and 24 school districts identified as undecided. So the red is who has decided to opt out. The green are those who decided to remain in, and the white illustrates those who have decided who have identified as being undecided. And this data is as of 1/22, which is January the 22nd, 2025. So we're not the only school district contemplating this decision, and I can assure you it's because of the many things I just said about QBE and the other things that we have to consider that's going out of our expenditures. So what does this process look like? So we have to have the public hearings. Well, then this is the first one tonight, so we're doing that now. And I already went over the dates for the public hearings, but the next one is scheduled for the 31st at 9 o'clock, Friday, February 7, 2025, we did the last one. And the whole intent of this is us to provide as much information as we can to U.S. stakeholders so that you can be informed and you also provide us input, which will be a two-way listening tool for us as we begin to gather community feedback. So all the hearings, like I said before, will be held in this room. We must submit the signed resolution to the Secretary of State by March 1st, 2025. We don't have the luxury of time. So could the school district say, hey, we want to have more time to consider? We wish we could, but the state has provided strict limitations. We could not advertise anything until after January the 1st. So which leaves us from now until the middle of February to complete all of our hearings and to complete the process that the state has. So this is why the timeline is what it is. So some frequently asked questions just from our research that has been gathered. The House Bill 581 established a statewide floating homestead exemption effective January the 1st, 2025. Placing this cap that we've talked about. Now, what are the likely long-term implications of House Bill 581 on taxpayers? So House Bill 581 limits residential property value growth, potentially shifting the tax burden of non-homestead properties like farm, businesses, and rentals. Over time, that increase put pressures on cities, counties, and schools to either consider raising the millage rate or cutting programs, personnel, and people that will significantly impact our operations. We only can go up to 20 mills, so we have a cap on how much we can raise the millage rate. The impact of this revenue will be small initially, but it will grow over time. Remember, we're considering about 50 years this bill being in place if we remain in or out. Now, one difference in this is that let's say if Toohey County is opting out, but the city and county remains in. We're considering opting out because we don't have what they call a floating local option sale tax. So the bill provided a 1% tax that has to be voted on by you all on the ballot that gives the county more revenue to collect if they decide to remain in. The school district does not have that luxury. If we had that luxury, I think we'll be having different conversations to collect more revenue, so we'll not have to go through this process. But the bill does provide the county and the city an opportunity to put on the ballot a 1% sale tax to offset revenue. So there is some differences. Again, there's no state funding implications with the county and city. The school district has that. We don't receive this 1% penny. The county and city may have the opportunity to do that. The school district does not. So there are significant differences on why one entity may do something versus the other. I want to make that clear. So this seems like a benefit to the taxpayers. Why Toohey County considering to opt out? So we do know long term this will create some tax inequities among similar homes. Property owners that's been there for quite some time versus those who come in could be paying significantly different bills, and businesses, those costs can increase for those groups. And I know there are exemptions in place to help address that from the county level. However, it further widens that gap because that tax burden would then go to those groups. And like I mentioned before, why doesn't Toohey County take more time to consider this before making a decision? We have to make the decision by March 1st. We only have one shot at it. That's how the bill is written. So a lot of this is mandates coming from the state, and we have to follow those mandates to the T. So this is why we even here tonight, because the bill was passed, and we're responding to our part of that bill. And 98 school systems plan to opt out, like I mentioned before. And that number, I'm sure, will grow slightly more. But there are a lot of school systems that are considering this, a lot of school systems that we talk to that have to make the same decision that we're making. And again, I'm sure other counties and cities in those particular areas are making decisions as well. But we are just unique in the way that we're funded. And so we have to consider the whole picture when we're making these type of decisions. And I want to reiterate in my closing that this does not take any local exemptions from you all as taxpayers. What you currently have as an exemption will stay and remain. Make that clear. The second piece is the school district is not gaining any more dollars from doing this. The school district will only even have this as a consideration when a reassessment is done. And that's not on the school district to consider that. Reassessments are handled in a different office. But when it does, like we mentioned before, if there is significant amount of revenue over what we need to take, the tax commissioner and I specifically, we work hand in hand on this. He'll suggest a rollback rate that we'll look at and consider to ensure the tax offset is fair to everybody. So again, we don't make the decision in isolation about taxes. We do work hand in hand with Bud Smith. I consider him a good friend. And we look at those decisions and make sure that we're being fair and equitable. So we do have checks and balances there. And lastly, we just want to be transparent. We want to make sure that you see this. That's why we're streaming it live. We've added additional TVs. We're doing things differently to ensure that this is not something that's catching you all off guard, that we're advertising the newspaper, doing all those necessary things to be transparent and open. And I think that builds the trust and relationship that we can to move forward. So I do know that my hope is that we can walk away with more information and understanding about what the bill is. My second hope and desire, if there are disagreements, that we can find a common place in that conversation. And lastly, that you can walk away and say, Tweeds County Board of Education gave us the opportunity to come and speak, voice their opinions, and provide the feedback so we can continue to make decisions that are best for our school district and also the county. So at this time, Dr. Bullitt, I'll turn it over back to you so we can, at this time, we'll start the hearing. Okay. And what this process will look like, just to reiterate, we'll come to this podium here, and I'll make sure the mic is turned on. You'll have 5 minutes to speak, to provide feedback. We are very passionate about what we do, and I'm sure you all are passionate as well, so we just want to be mindful of the core and order, just to make sure that we're respectful of all parties and that we had the opportunity to express ourselves that can be heard. We'll begin to see if the pace starts slowing down as y'all are coming up. We'll start saying, hey, we see now the pace is slower. We'll get ready to end it. But as long as y'all are coming, we'll allow as much time as needed for y'all to provide feedback. Okay? But Denise Smith, you feel free to come here, sir.
Thank you, sir. I don't know if some of y'all may not know me, but I'm Buddy Neesmith. I'm your tax commissioner. I asked to come tonight and kind of go over a few things that may shed some light, and I hope we shed some light to the Board of Education, and we give some answers coming from my side of it, being a tax commissioner, of what I see going on in Tweeds County and locally. We started out, James came to see me. James, good presentation, man. That was very good. But James came, and I originally wanted to opt out. I went to the commission and said, we don't need this. I don't like a homestead. I don't like a floating homestead exemption. I love homestead exemptions for homeowners. Don't get me wrong. I'm a proponent of that. Floating homesteads I don't like because, as James talked about, it does change year to year. But that's not a bad thing. So I went to my board of commissioners and said, guys, we need to opt out of this. 2 reasons. I don't like a floating homestead. It ties into a reevaluation. I definitely don't like reevaluations. The next thing was that just a bad bill to me. But I hadn't read the bill, so I said I've got to educate myself. I've told them to opt out. When I read the bill, it's not a bad bill. It's a good bill. What this bill does, y'all, is after researching, I found several things, and it addresses on a local level something that's a little bit different on a state level. We're a small county. We're not a big county. The homestead exemptions, again, this exemption can be a blessing in a reevaluation. When you have a reevaluation in Twice County, and he mentioned the sales ratio study, which is 32%, that basically means the state of Georgia is going to come in a few years and tell Twice County, you got to get your values up to a 40% value. That means a reevaluation. When you have a reevaluation, you are increasing your values. Now, some things was mentioned, and I respect James. James and I do work very well together, but one of the things that he mentioned was other properties was going to have an unfair share of this. That's really not correct, James, because we have forest land protection, which is an exemption on forest land for companies that have forest land. We have conservation use, which is exemption from regular homeowners that have tracts of land. They get an exemption on it. Freeport exemption, you get it from the industries. They get Freeport exemptions. They're getting exemptions. You've got personal property exemptions. Anything that's over $7,500, you're exempt. Under $7,500, you're exempt on it. So right now in Twiggs County, this is Twiggs, and the only thing I can speak to is Twiggs. I can't speak statewide. The homeowner in Twiggs County is paying an unfair burden. Even with the exemptions that we have a $6,000 and a $25,000 for elderly, and that really helps out. But still, when you give exemptions to conservation, look at the farmers. You talked about farmland. Well, farmers don't pay, and they deserve it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about the farmers. They don't pay any taxes on their personal property, any of their equipment. They're exempt. Loggers just got an exemption last year. They don't pay any taxes on their equipment either. Again, the personal property. So everybody in Twiggs County, other than the homeowners, with what homestead exemption is, these $6,000 homestead exemption guys were put in, 20, 25 years ago. It's been a long time. And so we've had increases since then and not realized the increases in the homestead exemption. This is going to do two things, and I want the board to really pay attention to what I'm telling you on this. And I asked James this the other day when he came in and picked up a check from me for this year's taxes on ad valorem taxes, the last part of that came in for 2024 to fund 2025. The question I asked him, I said, have you talked to anybody in Wilkerson County? How much money have they collected? I've paid, the county has paid, my staff has turned over about 80% of the taxes they'll use on local effort for next year. Wilkerson County has zero. The reason they have zero is they had a reevaluation this year. This is something, again, y'all need to listen now. The reason they don't have a digest is because they had a reevaluation and people filed appeal. X amount of appeals, you can't get a digest approved. They still don't have their bills out yet. They still do not have them. It'll be lucky if they get a bill, if they get their money coming in April of this year. My question to James was, what would the school do? What would the county do? Chairman's here. What would you do if you didn't have your money and you'd be going to the bank and borrowing money? This bill, after I read it, this bill is a blessing to counties that are forced, that are going to be forced with a reevaluation, which we will be forced to do. What this says is if they come in on your home and they increase your home $100,000, you got a $100,000 home and they increase it to $100,000, your value goes back to $100,000. That's your exemption. It's not a great loss. It's not a loss. I have the numbers. If anybody wants to come to my office, and I know I'm limited on time here to get into it, I have the numbers. I went back to 2009. We had a reevaluation in 2009. In 2009, we went through, tax bills went out on time. They were due on time. You know the reason for that? We had an increase. Home values were fairly in fairly good shape at that time, but farmland was way off. Farm preferential assessment, which was prior to conservation use, came into effect that year. Instead of people coming in and filing appeals when they came into the assessor's office, hey, file for your farm exemption. They filed it, they dropped their appeal. We got a digest in 2009 on time. That year, the tax values, and it's right here in your 5-year history, and I'll be glad to share it with anybody. In 2009, those values, the values went from $193 million, this is 40% value, $193 million on real and personal property to $269 million. That was a reevaluation. The exemptions now, the exemptions for the farm preferential overall went from 35 million to 62 million. That year, and it's in the 5-year history, and they talked about the 20 mills. 2008, the school's millage rate was 20 mills. They were capped out. They got the reevaluation. They dropped the millage rate to 17.10 in 2009 because of the reevaluation. They had a 20-some-odd million increase in the exemptions from farm preferential, and they still realized a $324,000 increase in the taxes. That's from a reevaluation. What I'm saying here, y'all, and y'all please don't listen to your local. Listen to what you got locally, and I have the numbers here. And I'm not grabbing something out of Atlanta. I'm telling you what my digest, what your digest shows here in this county. I've gone back and took the 2024 digest and just magically said, what if we have an increase in 2026? We have a reevaluation in 2025. And plug those numbers in at a 75% increase in values. That amount with your homeowners is minuscule. It's small. It's not even near what it is with conservation use, forest land protection. The numbers we're talking about here is going to affect it some, but when it only applies in a reevaluation year. This is not going to happen next year. It's not going to happen the year after the year after. It will not happen until this county has a reevaluation, and that's when you're going to need it. It's when you reevaluate your property. And, you know, the argument was with James, and I appreciate that, James, was that the other property owners, but they've already got theirs. Now it's time for your homeowners, instead of having that overburden, they need the break this time. They'll get a break. It brings them back in closer proximity to where other property owner values are, and it also gets the county through a reevaluation. Because I'm telling you, you do a reval, call Wilkerson County, and you got a guy right here in this office, in this audience that's from Wilkerson County. He can tell you how far behind they are. But just be careful on this, y'all. If you opt out, you're gonna have two things going on. You're gonna have the county with one homestead exemption. You're gonna have the school with another and the city with another. So it's gonna cause a lot of confusion, but my job is to be your tax commissioner. I'll get past the confusion. But I just would ask the board members, if y'all will come see me. Let me sit down with these numbers. I can go back to this digest. I can plug in whatever you want and give you those numbers and show you that it's not gonna be that big a deal for you. I can't speak to what James is talking about, that 5 mil. James, that y'all have to do on that, I don't know, and if that's not anything, but, you know, it's the cost of doing business. It's no different than the county. The county has to pay certain dollars out for whatever reason. Yours may go one place, theirs goes. That has nothing to do, James, with what this is doing. I promise you, this is just simply an exemption for the homeowners, and it just puts them in parity with where everybody else's is. And another thing too, before I changed, I told Fowler, I said, look, I want y'all to opt out of this. So I went back, I did some research. One of the recent things I did was, and James mentioned this, I went and looked to see how the voters in Tweeds County voted. 2,200 voters, 2,200 voters voted for it, 1,700 voted against it. So my thing to the commissioners was, when you have your hearing, I'm going to come in like James. I'm going to come in and defend you and tell the taxpayers why come you want to opt out. When I went out and looked at the registrar's office and saw what to vote, I said, I can't stand up in front of my constituents and tell them that, listen, we don't want this exemption when you've already voted for it. The people in Tweeds County voted for this exemption. Now, there's a lot of things in the exemption that James read out, but that's not what they saw. What they saw on that was, this is a homestead exemption. They wanted it. They voted for it. So I couldn't stand there in front of them and tell them that. I couldn't stand there and tell them not to vote, that I could support, wouldn't support a bill that gives them a homestead exemption. So I went back to the Board of Commissioners. I said, guys, y'all need to stay in this. But again, I thank you for your time, and I know I've run over. I appreciate y'all let me come up, but please, if y'all got any questions, come to the office. Just give me some time and let me go over these numbers before it gets too far, because I really think that, and again, it's a godsend for the homeowners in this county. But I'm telling you, if we do a reevaluation, and y'all, it's coming. When you at a 32% sales ratio study, they're gonna make you come to 40%. Commissioners have been fighting it, and we're fighting it as long as we have, but it's gonna come to a point where they're gonna say, you gotta do it, and whenever they do it, I'm telling you, if you wanna get through a reevaluation, it's proven. It's proven in 2005, so it can be, I can show you where it'll make it much easier to do it for reevaluation. But I thank you for your time. If anybody has any questions and wants to stop by the office, please let me know and stop by. Thank y'all. Thank you. Good job, man. Great job.
You all can come as you please.
I'm not gonna go up there, but from a county standpoint, we're gonna stay with our tax commission and vote in Twiz County. Y'all voted for it?
Can you get the microphone, please?
We're streaming, they just make sure everybody hears.
Sir?
We're streaming on the internet, we just wanna make sure everybody hears.
Oh, okay. From the county standpoint, this is my opinion now. We hadn't talked this, we hadn't discussed it, except what Mr. Neesmith had told us. But I stand with Mr. Neesmith and I stand with the voters of Twiz County. I have no plans of us opting out of this.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Hugh Falk. I live at 5744 Old Richlands Church Road. I've been in Twiz County all my life. Who's the chairman of the board? He's not here. Who's the vice chairman? Okay. All right. Are the board members, are y'all elected officials or y'all appointed? Y'all all elected, okay. Do you believe that the elections in Twiz County are handled fairly are honest elections? Okay, all right. I've got another question for the Vice Chairman. Do you believe in the Constitution of our great nation? Yeah. Believe in the Constitution. Okay, that's good. In your opinion, what does the first three words of our Constitution mean? It's we the people. What does that mean?
Self-explanatory. We are the people.
Right. But what does that mean? To me, I believe that means that the government's power comes from the people. Okay, of the United States. So do you agree with me or disagree with me on that?
Repeat yourself, sir.
Huh?
What did you say?
I said, I believe that when it says we the people, that the government's power comes from the people and the citizens of the United States. Do you believe that?
We are the people of the United States, yes.
Right, but do you believe that the people, that the government power comes from the people?
I believe in the Constitution of the United States of America.
Okay. All right.
I don't mean no disrespect to you, sir,
That's
but it's
fine.
just it's
And I'm not
answering.
meaning no disrespect either.
Okay.
You know, House Bill 581 passed in Twiz County, 57%. And that's, you know, a good majority of the people believe and voted for that bill, okay? So I would like for the board to explain to me, and I guess everybody else here, how can 4 people sit there and have the power to overturn the majority of the voters and their wishes for Twiz County concerning this bill? We voted on it, it passed by the majority. How do y'all, as 4 elected officials, go back and pull that power away from the people. Whether it's a good bill or a bad bill, that's not the point here. The point is, what makes our country great and a free country is that the people's, when we vote, we should be, our decisions should be upheld, regardless of the finances. All that doesn't matter here. Twiz County came, y'all all agreed we had an honest election, everything was good. It passed by the majority. So I just want you to explain to me, how can 4 people opt us out? Because, out of the 2,700 people that voted for this, only 4 people is a very small amount. So if anybody could address my question, I would really like to understand that, because,
So I want to go back. Thank you for the question. I want to go back to the second, third slide with the voting percentage, just so we can be on the same page. That's a great question. Now I just want to read the question again, so we'll be on the same page with this. Shall the Constitution of Georgia be amended as to authorize the General Assembly to provide by general law for a statewide homestead exemption that serves to limit increases in the assessed value of homesteads, but which any county, consolidated government, municipality, or local school system may opt out of the completion of certain procedures. The bill was written to provide the authority to the school districts. They haven't.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but my question is, what gives this board the right to go against the will of the people? Because that's not what our country's founded on.
Right.
It would be the same thing. Y'all all elected officials. I don't know how much y'all won your margins in the last election, okay? But let's just say you got 60% of the vote. Would you think it's fair that 4 of us on some committee or some house said, well, fixing to opt you out? We're gonna let so-and-so now be the chairman of this board. That's my point.
And that's why we have hearings,
Right.
to hear from you all, to
Right.
hear from the public, to hear from the people that voted us in. That's why we have hearings. We want to hear your voice as to what you all are thinking.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're listening. So don't think that we're not, I understand about the exemption. Of course, I'm a homeowner here too, and definitely, I don't want to pay no more money for taxes. I don't. And then too, I do want to make sure that our school system is taken care of. These kids are our future. I don't want to take away from our children. I want to make sure that we have all the resources and that we can keep it going with our future as well. But you got a very good statement, and believe me, we are listening.
Okay. Well, thank y'all.
Ashley Falk, 6 Nobles Road, Northwest, Jeffersonville. I'm actually a 2010 alumni of Twice County Public Schools. So I'm here tonight to speak for the families, the seniors, and the homeowners in this community. The decision you're discussing about House Bill 581 isn't just about taxes. It's about the stability of the lives we've built here. The House Bill 581 exemption isn't a luxury, it's a shield. Without it, many of our residents could face serious financial hardship. Did you know that 20% of Tweeds County residents are seniors, and many of them who live on fixed incomes? These individuals don't have the flexibility to pay higher property taxes, and without the extra protection of House Bill 581, they could face sudden, unaffordable tax hikes as property values rise. Seniors should never have to choose between paying their taxes and covering basic needs like medication or groceries. Opting out would remove an additional safeguard that many in our community rely on to stay in their homes. Nearly 30% of households in Twiz County live below the poverty line. For these families, every dollar matters. Without House Bill 581, property taxes could increase significantly, pushing families into a potential financial crisis. Stability in the property taxes helps families stay in their home, build their futures, and contribute to our community. Removing this exemption risks tearing that stability away from them. This exemption benefits all homeowners by capping taxable value increases unless the fair market value rises significantly. If this protection is removed, every homeowner in Twiz County will be exposed to unpredictable tax hikes when property values increase. The exemption provides fairness and stability for everyone, ensuring taxes remain manageable. If the board chooses to opt out, that protection is gone forever and there's no going back. This exemption exists because the majority of voters wanted it. Over 2,300 residents voted in favor of House Bill 581 because they needed or wanted this protection. By opting out, the board risks ignoring the will of the people and undermining the trust that they place in this process. Our elected officials have a responsibility to honor the majority's decision. Stable property taxes allow people to plan for the future. They encourage families to invest in their homes, stay in the community, and build a life here. If taxes rise unpredictably, families may be forced to leave, homes could be left empty, and our community could be weakened. The House Bill 581 exemption ensures that Twiz County remains a stable and attractive place to live. I urge you to think carefully about this decision. Opting out might seem like an easy solution, but it comes at a human cost. Think about the seniors on fixed incomes, the families struggling to make ends meet, and every homeowner in this room who relies on the stability this exemption provides. Protect the House Bill 581 exemption, protect our seniors, protect our families, and protect all the homeowners in Twiz County. Honor the will of the people who voted for this protection. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening, y'all. I'm David Allen. Really had a couple of questions here. Do y'all forecast any loss of students with the vouchers? Have y'all forecast that? I mean, is that a consideration or no? Losing more students? You nodding your head, I guess yes. Well, now, I did read in the bill, and I guess I read enough to be dangerous about it. What's the plan then? I understand there's one provision in there that the Legislative Assembly can vote against it. So even if you're wanting to opt out of it, if they vote, you can't opt out of it. So do you have a plan for that? Did you see that aspect in there? About the Legislative Assembly?
So
There
what?
was a provision in there that I read, that if the counties or school systems was opting out,
Sure.
they could come back and they could vote against that.
Sure.
And whether you wanted to or not, you couldn't opt out.
Yes. So let me, so I can,
I didn't notice
give me
that.
your name again, sir.
David Allen.
Mr. Allen. So what he's referring to is the General Assembly has a written authority to vote a local exemption similar to what the floating exemption is. So talking to Representative Dennis Matthews as well, we had some conversations, and so at that moment, he didn't confirm nor deny, you know, whether that would be a possibility coming from his office. However, it is written like that. It's not written to cause any confusion or to say that we can overturn this. I believe that the legislature was fair, but it is written like that. So I want to affirm what you're saying, but also know that speaking with the representative, I don't think that's currently something that he's contemplating or looking into, but that is something that's out there.
He might get more feedback after more meetings.
I'm sure. Yes, sir. From a hearing standpoint, you have to come back up to the podium. We'll have the, you know, yes, sir. We just want to be fair to everybody because we start that and then, you know, we'll have that. Yes, sir.
Buddy, you mentioned something earlier too, which, you know, I recently experienced. You was talking about ad valorem tax. I was just, I guess I'll come by there too just to see what the amount of ad valorem tax gets paid in Twiggs. I would be curious about that. One other thing too is the population of Twiggs going up or down?
That's data I haven't seen. I only can
about that.
speculate.
Okay.
So I don't want to answer that. And
All right.
yes, sir.
But those two questions, like I said, you know, if y'all were foreseeing a loss of students because of the voucher, and I guess the other thing too is, how do y'all feel about that? Do you feel there's a reason that students would want, or parents would want to be taking advantage of the voucher? I guess that would speak, I guess what they feel or consider quality of education here.
And it will be their decision, you know, if they do want to take that voucher. Some may take it in homeschool, you know, then they have to. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I say it would be their option, you know, if they do want to take the voucher. If they did take the voucher, you know, and just say they homeschool and their child get behind, then they can bring them back or whatever to try and catch up. But it's up to whomever, the parent, I guess, to make that decision.
Right, okay.
I would say there's nothing we can do about the voucher other than what we're going to do. That is to work hard to improve everything that we have within our school system. And I feel everybody in here pain. I'm a homeowner myself. I'm with you guys. I don't want taxes to go up, but also my consideration is at the end of the day, what about the kids? And I definitely understand what you're saying, sir, when you ask that question about what are we going to do. We're going to do everything we can to hold everybody accountable to make sure that we have a school system that is up to par.
Well, sir, now, I tell you what, I'm glad you brought that up. And I'll be honest with you. You know what? Kids are the future. But unfortunately, in comparison to other counties, I mean, you know, there's carloads every day. People in this county go to Bleckley.
Right, they taking our money out. That QB is following them.
Well, ma'am, and I guess you know, that's how you feel about it. But I'm not going to get into what they've said or anything because that's them.
Yes.
But you know, that's here again, that's the decision they make.
Right.
And the other thing too about it is, like I said, guys, unfortunately, like I said, numbers don't lie. And let's just say that the numbers don't reflect, I guess, a true quality of education for the high school level in this county. I mean, you know, and it has improved, because I know at one time there was a rating, of course, now this has been years ago, being 159 counties in Georgia. Twiggs at one time was rated 158 as the worst school system in Georgia. So, I mean, you know, like I said, yeah, we'd like to see excellence in our kids, but there again, the numbers. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Good evening, y'all. Gabe Outlaw, 1046 Fowler Road. Mr. Allen, I can answer your question about population that's going down. That's no secret. So the one thing I'll say is Ashley talked about it, you know, this is on the ballot, 70-ish% of the citizens voted for it. You know, Mr. Allen said that numbers don't lie no matter what you're dealing with. And my request is that you honor the wishes of the voters, and that is that they voted for it. Speaking for me personally, I hate talking about taxes. I hate dealing with taxes. I can't stand it. Wilkinson County was mentioned, and there's one person individual. I know why they're in the shape that they're in. I know a very contributing factor to that. But if a reevaluation ever happens, my ask is that whoever does that reevaluation does it based on counties that are comparable to Twiggs County. Bibb County, Houston County, even Bleckley County are not comparable to Twiggs County. They have way more people, they have way more industry. You cannot compare Twiggs County to a Bibb County to a Fulton County. If you want to compare Twiggs County size and makeup, whether it's agriculture, population, or whatever, you need to look at a Wilcox County, a Telfair County, a Wheeler County. We're 30 minutes from Macon, but you need to compare us to somebody of our size, whether that's spending, whether that's schools, whether that's services, it doesn't matter. So my ask is that the board honors the wishes of the taxpayers, and that is to vote for this. Do not opt out of it. You know, I don't know what the total numbers were, but over 2,000 people in the county voted for it, or 1,800, whatever it was, 70% around that. So that's my ask. If a reevaluation ever does happen, have it done by somebody that has looked at rural counties before. So you know, that's my only ask. Don't, you know, I'm with Mr. Buddy on that. What he meant was the board of 5. You know, you apparently hold the power to overturn the voters' wishes of the county. And I appreciate y'all's comments about what you said. And I can tell you, our taxes are already high enough. That's no secret. And I'll give you an example of mine, and you can put in an open records request and find it if you want to. My value went up because I bought the house according to our previous tax assessor. I bought it. I should pay more. I appealed it, got it reduced by half of what they increased it to. Then realized I didn't have homestead exemption, so I signed up for homestead exemption and got that. What's $6,000, whatever it is. So I got $6,000 reduced that year. What happens the following year? My value goes up $6,000. So don't tell me that we have the power. No, a few clicks on a keyboard is amazing. I'm not going to go on and on about that, but that's just where I'm coming from as a voter and a taxpayer, as the history surrounding taxes, not just y'all, but every department in the county is not so good. I mean, what do we get for it in return? I have no doubt y'all are doing the best job possible in your position, and thank you for that, just like I believe all the other departments are doing. But the taxpayers voted. We bear the burden. We should have the largest voice. That's just my honest opinion. We elected y'all, and we voted. So as far as I'm concerned, you did a great job. Thank you for the presentation. But to me, that's it. That should be the end of the conversation. How do my constituents vote? And if you look at that, it's very evident. It's on his slide. So there should, in my opinion, there should be no further discussion other than that. So thank you.
Mr. Allen brought up a point that I had forgot to mention when he talked about it. It is a bill, in the bill, and I've talked with Danny Mathis as well. That's how our exemptions are as high as we are now. Wilkinson County, I think, only have like $2,000 exemption. Ours is from local exemptions, which was passed through local legislation. Board members, the problem that you got to be careful of here, right now, this exemption only applies on a reevaluation year. So you're going to have please come see those numbers in 2009. it only applies in a reevaluation year if for some reason this group goes to their local delegation and say, okay, they voted it down, they're not gonna give it, we want an additional exemption on the school board, and they come across the board and say, okay, we're gonna go from $6,000 to $10,000, you will get hit that year with a loss in revenues, because you're not gonna have an increase in values. That money's gonna come off the current values. So there's a fear that if that were to happen, that you would see, it would be devastating as a revenue loss. But as it is now, it's really not a revenue loss. And I can show you again, and I'm using 2009 numbers, the last reevaluation, I keep going back to that, was the last reval we had. And another thing too, James, you're exactly right. That's about the opt-out. It was in the bill that the taxpayers could see it, but the only thing about looking at that ballot, you didn't see that. The only thing that those 2,200 people saw on that ballot was homestead exemption. They don't put all of it on the ballot. All they saw was a homestead exemption. I want it. They weren't really voting to say, okay, I vote for it, but and I understand they have a right to opt out. They just wanted the exemption. But thank y'all.
Yes, it was a lot of information in it that we really had to read and research. So thank you. And also, if you will, I know the young lady that was talking about, the seniors, about the exemption. About the seniors with the exemption, could you go over that just a little bit again, on how we are still, trying to help our elderly, our seniors?
So, Mr. Bass, there's a slide with that information, if you can find it for me. So essentially, again, this is work from the tax commissioner, I believe 2 or 3 years ago, coming to us talking about doubling this 15,000 to 30,000. And part of that was because we knew we needed to do more for our seniors. And this includes those who have more revenue to consider at the 30,000 mark. And so that exemption was 25,000, and that homestead exemption, which we just mentioned as well, was 6,000. They've been in place for 15, 20 years or so. So they have been in Twiggs County for a while. But we do consider our seniors as a Board of Education. In conjunction with Dr. Bullard, we made that decision with Buddy Neesmith as well. So that's not something that we broadcast. We just did the right thing in that moment because we understood it. But this coming down as well, we are considerate of all stakeholders. There's a lot of tools I know that the tax commissioner office has and that can use, and I understand all the exemptions as well that are in place. But like stated before, I do believe that there will be some inequities as time passes because of all the exemptions, and then we have to consider what that really looks like down the road. The market was very different in 2009. You're coming off the housing crisis, and you're coming in this market in 2024, coming after a pandemic. So I do know the values he's presenting is very accurate. I know that, but we're in 2 different markets. So when we're looking at comparing what we're doing as far as value is concerned, we have to look at data that we can compare in the right markets, because that's essentially why this is here. The market drove the reassessment money and reassessment figures. So we have to look at the market from being comparable in that as well.
You gave your 5 minutes to Mr. Neesmith. You certainly can have it back. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Sure.
Hello, I'm Scott Borthwick. I work at 1602 Old Shallow Church Road. And I just learned some things, I guess, during a meeting myself. I agree 100% that we should go with the voters voted for. But I'm wondering, we're a wealthy county, for it said in the presentation, how they decide that Twiggs County is a wealthy county compared to Houston County. And the quality-based education, and that you have money going from Twiggs County to a wealthy county, really, like a Houston County is a wealthy county to me, but you're getting money from Twiggs County, which is not a wealthy county, everybody knows that. But they're taking money from you up to going, you're taking, that needs to be overcome there in order to, I agree with you, you need more money necessarily, but I think there's other things that need to be addressed besides this bill. I think the House bill is already voted on and people want the bill, they want the exemption. And I don't think it's right to go against that they wanted. They really shouldn't put that in there as far as an option. They shouldn't have put it in there to cause confusion by giving, oh, your cities, counties, and your schools can all do what they want. But that's not what the voters wanted, you know. But that's all I kind of had to say. It was like, can we address the issues of why money's leaving the county? That shouldn't be leaving the county to other rich counties or getting your money, you know, our money. That's
Maybe that we all need to get together about this equalization grant and write to the senators, to our state representatives, and tell them we are not a wealthy county. You know, we need money coming to Twiggs instead of going out to these other rich counties. So that's what we need to get together as Twiggs County. We need to get together and let the state know that we are not that wealthy county. I love Twiggs County. Love y'all too.
They're making improvements on our roadways. They're getting rid of the dilapidated houses and all that stuff. That's why they're getting their money. They're showing forth an effort to make everything desirable so that the big money people up north would desire to come down here and live.
Attraction.
And Twiggs County isn't doing a thing. Okay. No, ma'am. We pay county taxes. Those taxes is for the county.
You're right.
They're not for the board of school board. They're not for the sheriff's department. They're not for anything. They're for the county. What comes first? That police car get a flat tire if he runs down that road and hits that pothole. Well, the county got to fix it. But who paid for the gas for him to drive down there? He was going home. You understand what I'm saying? Yes, we got roads. I've lived for 30 plus years on the same road, and the first year I moved in, they promised to pave my road. Well, it's a gravel top road, but they'd come out every now and then put little patches here and there. And all they did was just made the potholes worse. Now, in the last 4 years, I seen a stretch of my road, I'd say as long as this room get blacktopped because of a dump truck driver who lives there, and his dump truck was keeping the roads tore up. There's signs posted, no trucks allowed. But yet, nobody does nothing about it. Somebody got some money put in their pocket somewhere. And I'm sorry, it's just the way common folk feel. Y'all, for the 30 years I've lived here, there should have been at least 3 firehouses built by now. There's not, people won't build where there ain't a firehouse because they can't insure the property. So my little 5 acres would just be gone, and Well, I'm sorry, we got a volunteer fire department, but there ain't nobody works it. Ain't nobody there. And if they're called, they have to be called. And the fire's out by the time they get there. There's just so many things going wrong in the county that need to be taken care of other than the school's education. Because the kid's only gonna be as smart as you let him be. I'm sorry about it, but you can't make him smarter if he don't wanna be. Now, my nephew, senior year, right here in Tweeds County, borrowed my car to go to school, and I had a hunting knife laying in between the seats. I don't know who they are, but they expelled him from school. Would not even let him graduate or nothing. And we were talking first quarter of school. So he had to go a whole 3/4 of school homeschool because a knife in a car, locked up, and he had no idea it was even there. I didn't even remember putting it there. So there's lots of things happening in Tweeds County that shouldn't. Our roadways are extremely bad out in the country areas. If you've got some pull somewhere and you know a friend of a friend in politics, you can get that road you live on paved. I was promised when he's a commissioner right now, the one over the dump and all that, but he promised to pave my road too on his election promises. Vote for me, I'll do it. Yeah. You ain't done nothing yet. They're looking at the poverty in Tweeds County and exasperating it, really, if you want to know the truth about it, and instead of doing something about it. All these little back roads around here, you know, the school buses can't get up and down when it rains. It's terrible. I pay school taxes. I was told that when I turned 63 years old, I didn't have to pay property taxes or school taxes anymore. Didn't happen. Matter of fact, that same year, my school tax doubled. And I haven't had a child in Tweeds County school the whole time I've been here. Just a couple of weeks ago, my taxes went up again. I don't know, I mean, somebody's putting this money to use somewhere it doesn't supposed to be. They, graduation, prom. I've heard a lot of talk about that. All we had was an auditorium and a band, you know? And then they get in a football field, police protection, you know,
afternoon, everybody. My name's Al White. I live in Bullard. And I don't have a lot to say here. I just wanted to kind of get back in the realm of the Board of Education here. So the way I look at things is knowledge is power. The most knowledgeable man about this tax situation is sitting on the front row right there. I encourage each one of you to go sit down with Mr. Buddy and run through the numbers that he was talking about. As many of you have brought up, the county voted, the constituents voted, and I don't think we really got an answer, but why could you go against what the county voted for? That's my question to you, and I encourage you to talk with Mr. Buddy, run through these numbers. I know there's a lot to unpack in this bill, but the county voted for it, the state actually voted for it and passed it as well. So please research this thing, look into it deeply, and we appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
So just to wrap up a little bit, because I see the pace slowing. As said in the beginning, we will try to allow as many people to talk as we can, turn over to the superintendent, and allow him to provide closure to the hearing. So the QBE formula that you all are referencing was passed in 1985, and there has been little to no correction to that formula on the state side since 1985. So there are a lot of people advocating for changing the formula so that it can be more equitable to counties like Twiggs. So the definition of high wealth and low wealth, we've been battling with that for a long time. And if we receive equalization grant, that will offset the dollars that you all will have to pay for school taxes is concerned. So Ms. Blackshear made a great point. If the advocacy energy is focused on legislation and helping on the state funding, then that could also ensure that local taxpayers are not bearing that burden. Our budget is primarily consisted of local taxes because the housing counties can afford for the state to pay them more, and they can lower their millage rate, which is like 14, because they get equalization grant. The law says that you have to have a millage rate of at least 14 to receive equalization. So those larger counties are doing just that so they can receive more money for the state. An illusion at best. Lower tax rate, but we also get money from the state. That's a position that we would like to be in as well. The last thing about just knowledge base too, Mr. Buddy Neesmith, knowledgeable man, been doing this for a long time. Encourage each of you to talk with him as well. And as far as the education aspect on school funding, again, I think we have a lot of knowledgeable people on our side to address that area as well. So between both parties, I think that you all can get a lot of information about the tax side and how the bills work, and also why education and financing, how that looks. Because I think with both, you'll get an understanding of why we're even here on tonight. So I do appreciate the questions. I appreciate everything that has been said, and we always try to answer everything with transparency. At this time, I'll let Dr. Bullock get us a close, and he'll take us through the rest of the hearing.
I was just gonna ask, so on that chart, Twiggs received zero? Is that right?
Zero. We never have received it.
We have to pay. We're required to pay. The way QBE is set up, we're supposed to pay 5 mills of our taxable income that we get from the taxpayers. We pay a little more than that because our property is taxed at 32.96, like Mr. Buddy D. Smith said. They don't care about that. They still charge us because as though we receive funds for 40%. They don't care that we're only bringing in 32. They charge us the full 40. So we don't really pay 5, we pay 6 mills. And the money that we pay to the state goes to these other districts, and not just them. They're not the only districts. We only wanted you to see the districts that are around us that do receive equalization. Other districts receive their local funds and their state funds too. But they get this additional set of unrestricted funds. They can use the money for anything they want to. There's no restrictions on how to use this money. But they get this additional money that we do not. So I heard someone say that every dollar does count, and I agree. Every dollar does count, and we know that we don't have this additional revenue stream to cover any loss that we have. They do. If they lose funds, just you can see the amount of money that they have to actually use to cover any loss that they would get. We don't get that. We're like Wilkinson. We get $0 in equalization. Sir, I've written letters. Yeah, I agree. I've given Ms. Blackshear letters. We can, and I think we should, as a county, write letters and give it to our local delegation about this particular aspect of the formula, because this particular aspect of the formula is very unequitable. You looking at the numbers. This is just the numbers that they receive in equalization. This is not what they receive from their local tax dollar. Mr. Austin, I'm gonna let you give her that number, because I will be I don't want to give her something that's off. And it can be ballpark.
Yeah, it's roughly about 4.8 million that we receive.
Yes.
Any idea on what we pay in regards to that?
Yeah. You can
We
tell.
pay 1.5 million out in our 5 mil, but it's a 6 mil that so we do pay about 1.5 million, and that increases year to year. Historically, it has.
So that means $1.5 million that the taxpayers in Twiggs gives to the school board to educate the children. We have to pay that. We have to give it back to the state. And the state takes that 1.5 million and disperses it to these other counties. Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
so the way the formula is our student population compared to our digest and our taxable value in the county. And they compute a formula that then suggests what wealth status you are in. So as an example, if we have 750 kids, but we're looking at our digest 11 and let's say 5.4 million on taxes, that ratio suggests that we have way more dollars to educate the kids compared to a Houston County. They may have 40,000 kids, and their budget, it is saying and suggesting that they do not have enough money compared to what they're bringing in to educate the kids. So they're low wealth, and the state needs to help. It's based on the student population and also the digest, the tax value. Yes, ma'am. Ours is Danny Mathis. That's
Danny Mathis
he
is our
represents our area.
representative.
Mhm. And Lucas, he's what, the senator? Okay, so and Lucas is senator and. Mhm. Yep.
That was all I was gonna say for our husbands, that, I think that what y'all are doing is good as far as presenting all this, but there's ever a time that you need a letter of intent from those people that elected you to do something that benefits us. I mean, I think that's just a simple ask. If you would like the citizens to write something in support of the Board of Education that elected them, I think that's, we're asking you to honor our wishes. I think it's only fair we write a 10-minute letter that could help address that very thing.
So that varies just because the numbers are the numbers. They have more students, the funding, and that ratio says what their per pupil expenditures are. You have to consider federal dollars in that as well, and that can vary. But Houston County has another penny that only 7 school districts in the state have, and they was grandfathered in, which gives them additional money. So we're not on the same playing field. Okay. Yep. Because we have a small student population.
I'm sorry, that still don't make sense to me, when you say a smaller student population.
Yeah, so if you have 700 kids and you have $11 million budget, it would show that you're spending more money for those smaller group of kids. Houston County has a lot more kids, and even though they have a significant budget, but it still shows that their margin is smaller. That goes back to the wealth status. So that's why the formula has to be adjusted too. And if we want to dig into this, you look at a building that's 40 years old, that's maintenance costs that the district has to pay. The fixed doors, a door for us is almost $2,000 to replace with the panic bars and all those things, right? And you look at the age of the buildings plus the roads that we travel, ensuring the buses there, rising costs in diesel. So there's a lot of other costs, indirect costs, that a smaller district with aging buildings and aging property has to consider that a Houston County don't. They have to Taj Mahal all the things. So their new schools don't require as much maintenance as ours do. So those things have to be considered. That's why I say we're not on the same playing field. And Twigs have to look at Twigs. It's hard to compare a house and build because they just have so many different other things in there with that. So fair point there. Yes, ma'am.
Saying what you just said and going back to as far as the budget and the children and how many are there and what you just said, the income level in this county can't touch what it is in Houston County. So we're looking at paying the same more taxes based on a lower income per family in this county. We can't take that kind of burden. I mean, we're the population in itself. When I was at the county commissioner's office, it wasn't even 10,000 people in this county, and it's less than that now. We cannot even get young people to build homes here. I have 3 boys, and none of them live here. And when families are looking at building a home and moving to a county, the first thing they're going to look at is the school system. So the lower our school system is rating overwide in the state, the less we're going to attract these young people. And if we're looking at raising taxes again and all of this right here, that's just one more X, and they're going to move somewhere else. You look, I mean, we're killing ourselves. We are killing ourselves in this county. Our population is aging. We have no new young people, young families moving in here. And that's why the county is going, the population is getting less and less and less. We're dying out. And we're not bringing new people into the county. And they're not going to come here until the school ratings for this public school system go up. And throwing more money at a problem that the money is not the problem. We've got money. The school system has money. It's not the problem. And until that is fixed, this is not going to get well. We can put Band-Aids on it all day, but it's not going to get well. And this county's dying out. And that's just the way it is. I don't want to see a lot of industry here. I look at this county as somewhere, this is a home county. I don't want a pile of industry here. But you want families to live here because it's a beautiful county and we have a lot to offer. A lot of people would give anything to be able to escape Macon or escape Warner Robins or Dublin. Yes. But you've got to have an education base for these children. Nobody wants to have to bus their kids all over the state or get them up an hour early to take them to Bleckley County when you got a school bus coming right down your road. But you've got to get the quality of the school system back to where people want to come. I graduated here. I've lived here my whole life. And I will want to see young families come here. But it's not going to happen until the school system brings the quality of the education back to where it deserves to be.
Thank you. So passionate statements, and
I hear her, and I hear your voice, ma'am, and I respect everything that you had to say. I've lived here as well, but I think that's a problem that's systemic more than the school. We have to hold everybody in position accountable for the growth of this county. The reason I've talked to a lot of people too, the reason why people are not moving here, we don't have anything. There's a lot of other things that we got to do as a county. It's going to be more than the school board. It's going to take all of us coming together and saying that we can grow this county. I do believe that it's a great place to raise a family. I've lived here all of my life, and I believe in this community, in this county. I'm new to the board, but that's why I'm serving. I'm serving because I believe in this, in our system. I believe that we can be better. We acknowledge the fact that we got to grow and we have to get things better. We acknowledge that we got some things that we have to improve, and we're here to work on that. And we understand that that's something that we have to do. Mr. Neesmith, I heard you speak, sir, and I listened to you well, and I do want to speak with you. But my question for you, sir, was you talked about how the homestead will help the homeowner, but my question to you is, how will it help the school system? Somebody else asked a question about how can 5 people make a decision for all of us. Well, we are elected officials, that is true, but we also have the burden of making sure that the school system do become what you guys are asking for, that we do have an attractive school system, that we can also have foresight in seeing what will happen with the school system. So that's my question, Mr. Neesmith. How will it affect the school system? Because it's important that we are able to operate. And I agree with you guys. One of the things they presented in the presentation was that we will roll back the millage rate. All of us, we are also homeowners too. We are affected, and we understand, and we feel your pain. And I respect everybody who spoke on today. But we have a problem in this county that the entire county has to grow, and it's bigger than the school system. It goes from the county commissioner to the city to everybody has to be held accountable. And we need more talks and more talks about growing our county, so we, like the young lady, the lady who spoke said, about, so we can attract more people, but we cannot do it if we're going to stay divided. We're now at the time that we have to come together and figure this out as people who love this county, this town, this city. We have to figure out how to work this thing together. And that's the only way we're gonna make it.
I would agree on that. I agree with everything you said about growing, but the House bill, that's where I disagree with you. The House bill has no bearing on the Board of Education as far as how does it serve you. The House bill was suggested and passed to help the homeowner. Buddy mentioned the landowner, the farmer, the timber landowner. That House bill, you as a board should not be looking at that. I mean, you should. How does this affect the school system? But again, it goes back to how we voted, in my opinion, how we voted, and what is its intent? Its intent was to cap the rate that a home value can go up. Buddy mentioned it. The only way it's going to happen is if a reevaluation happens. I don't want that, and if that ever happens, that goes back to what I said. Whoever does a reevaluation doesn't need to be who does it for apartments in suburbs of Atlanta. It needs to be who does it for a Wilcox County, a Telfair County, a Wheeler County, not who does it for Wilkinson County. So to look at that House bill and say, how does this affect the school? That's your job to do that, but the whole reason that passed the state legislature is for homestead exemption, the homeowner. So I mean, not the school board member, not the budget of the school. And you're right, the county does need to grow. She mentioned this is where people get away. This is where people call home. But I can just tell you, nothing is going to get better here. What needs to happen is development and businesses that get here. That's not why we're here. I can tell you all about that if you want to hear about the permitting processes of the county. It's terrible. So if you want to talk about what needs to happen in the county to grow, we need more businesses here so you can do rollbacks, but you have more people paying taxes. Then that's been the whole issue with probably everybody in this room, is there's nowhere else to get it. We need more money, so where can we get it? The homeowner. And that's why we were all in this room a few months ago, some of us, myself included, not being so nice, because we're tired of paying more. Just because the Board of Education needs more money, and this is totally separate from this House bill. It's not our job to pay it. That's where you come in. It's your job to make the tough decisions. It's your job to make cuts. It's your job. If you got to make cuts, you got to make cuts. I said that when I was here a few months ago. You can't spend what you don't have. So if my bank account goes into zero, they cut me off. They're not just gonna keep giving me loans. So, but yeah, Twiggs County needs to grow or it will die. And it's on the downhill slide. It's been like that for years. As long as there's no new business coming here, it's not gonna get better. And that's just the way it is. So we complain about the way it is, but we do nothing to attract new businesses. That's the truth.
That's the truth.
Well, there is one thing you want to say. Now, not only does a parent look at the school system, I promise you, a business looks at the school system. A business does, and I'm gonna tell you something other. You take Albany, Georgia. Albany, Georgia went through a lot of this right here. There was a huge business down there. They even had classes on how to fill out an application so they could apply for jobs. People wouldn't even do it. And I'm gonna tell y'all something else too. This is a hard one right here I'm fixing to mention. There's a business in Twiggs County right now, and part of that business's promise was to employ citizens of Twiggs County. And I hadn't heard the last number, but from my understanding, the ratio at Academy Sports is very low for Twiggs County citizens. And there's a lot of reasons, well, not a lot of reasons, but there was a few key reasons they don't employ them no more. But I'm gonna promise you, I'll tell you this right here, a business is not gonna come to a county that the education of the children is not equal to other places. Why does Lawrence? Lawrence not out and out of this. Look at Lawrence County school system. They're great. Houston County. Y'all look here. We come over here, we actually had probably 97 back here. Reason why we didn't move here? One thing and one thing only. Right here where we're sitting, school system. We were in Houston County. And that's it. It's just numbers. It's not nothing against y'all. It's numbers. And that's the whole thing. And if you want business to come here, you want industry to come here, the county has to be able to provide qualified people. And I'll tell you what too, while we're at it, the other numbers, you compare salaries, the Board of Education salaries to other counties. And I think that the numbers right there will speak for themselves. And anybody in this room, you know what? They don't mind paying for what they get. But if you're putting money in, like the lady said over there, and you're not getting it back out, there's a problem. People don't want it. People won't sustain it. So we can call it systemic all we want, and that's passing the buck when we say systemic. And that's bottom line. Of course, that's my opinion on it. But the thing about it is, when you're in the driver's seat, that's where the bus is going.
Thank you, Board. Let me be the first to also, let me address that last statement if you don't mind. We take full responsibility for where we are. We know that our students may not come to us as school ready as other counties, but it's our responsibility to take them from where they are and to grow. And I think, I'm not sure which, Jim, I think it might have been you, sir, who mentioned that we have, and you can check all of the data, our school system has been on a trend upward in terms of growth in numerous areas over the last number of years. And I can speak to that and show you all of that data. We presented a lot of that data to our Chamber of Commerce back in September or October. I'll be happy to share it again. So the school system is on that projection of growth, and I want to thank the board for putting that foundation in place, meaning the curriculum, the assessments, doing the things that we needed to sustain our staff, because like you said, we're right here. Staff can drive 30 minutes, 20 minutes anywhere and go to a completely different school system. They don't have to come, but you want quality people to be in your classrooms and leading your schools, et cetera, so that our students will continue to grow. The promise is that we will continue to invest in our students and keep that trend line going forward and going up. That's what we want to continue to see. Sometimes we have setbacks, but for the most part, in the last 4 years, I can speak to continuous growth. Is it where we want it to be? It is not. It is not. I'll be the first to say that. It's not where we want it to be. I'll be the first to say that. But is it going in the direction that we want? It is going in the direction that we want. It has taken time, but we can see the trend moving forward. We can see the progress in many different areas, and we're bringing many opportunities to our students that they didn't have before. I heard one of our alumni said that she graduated here. We have many opportunities now that our students have an opportunity to participate in to make sure that they're ready to either go to college if they want, go to a technical school if they want, or give them a work-based experience and a credential to go directly into the workplace. So I want you to know that we are responding to where our students are, and we are also looking at where they're having to go in the marketplace, and we're doing what we know we have to do, and we want to continue to do that. We'll be the first to accept responsibility that we have to make sure our students are being successful, and we have a school system that is moving them forward. So I want to make sure I address that. And I think I will put, after the hearings are over, we'll announce another day where I can share that data with the community so you can see the progress of your school system and be proud of what we have accomplished and what we're doing for our kids. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm a person that takes copious notes. I've taken copious notes on what you've said, and we're definitely going to consider everything that you've said. I know the board will. They're committed and they're passionate about Twiggs County, as we are as staff. I know Mr. Bassley has been taping, and of course things that I miss, we'll review and we'll catch it. Thank you for being here tonight and speaking your voice. It was important for us to hear you. It was important for the board to hear you. We're going to take Mr. Neesmith's invitation, continue to sit down, look at his studies, as well as bring how the school system is funded and help to educate him on how we're funded as well, and how money that comes to us through the taxes, we have to send it right back out. We have to, if we even got to keep what we send out in equalization, this wouldn't even be a conversation. This wouldn't even be a conversation, but we don't. We don't have any other funding streams for our school system. It is local, it is state, and the little, very little that we get in federal. So that is why the board has been in the mindset, but they definitely want to hear your thoughts, and we've heard you tonight. We thank you for being here. We're going to go ahead and end tonight's public hearing. Thank you all for coming out. Ma'am, before you leave, can I get your contact number? Yes, ma'am. So I can get you, and I'll post it on our website too, who our legislators are, so that, and I'll also do something to help you with some language about equalization. You see the issue in terms of equalization, but I know you want to know who to write the letters to. So if you give me information, I'll give it to you directly, and then I'll put it on the website for everybody else. Thank you all for coming out tonight.